Under the sweltering sun of the Egyptian desert, just beyond the crowded chaos of modern-day Cairo, rises a monument that has defied the ages, its secrets buried beneath layers of time and sand. The Great Pyramid of Giza, standing tall and silent for over 4,500 years, continues to challenge historians, engineers, and dreamers alike. It is the only surviving wonder of the ancient world, yet in many ways it is the most mysterious. Built during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu, also known as Cheops, the pyramid is said to have taken roughly 20 years to complete around 2560 BCE. But as centuries passed, the more we learned about it, the more questions emerged. Without the aid of modern technology, did a Bronze Age civilization manage to quarry, transport and assemble over 2 million limestone and granite blocks, some weighing as much as 80 tons, into a structure that aligns with uncanny precision to the cardinal points of the compass? The foundation itself is almost perfectly level, deviating by no more than a fraction of an inch, something that even today would require laser-guided equipment. The base spans 13 acres, and the original height reached 146.6 meters, making it the tallest human-made structure in the world for over 3,800 years. Even now it dominates the landscape. Yet the deeper mystery lies not just in its scale but in its precision, its orientation, and the lack of documentation from the time of its construction. Not a single blueprint, drawing, or inscription exists describing how it was built. The ancient Egyptians left behind detailed records of their religious beliefs, daily life, and even how to make beer, but nothing about how they erected this colossal monument. It's as if the method itself was either deliberately concealed or perhaps lost before it was ever written down. And so, speculation grows in the absence of hard answers. Theories range from teams of thousands of laborers using copper tools and sledges lubricated with water to reduce friction, to ideas involving lost technologies, advanced ancient knowledge, or even the intervention of extraterrestrials. What remains beyond dispute is that the logistics of building such a structure with known tools of the era seem, at the very least, improbable. Some researchers point to the internal structure, the so-called Grand Gallery, the King's Chamber, and the mysterious shafts that run at specific angles and terminate with no obvious function as evidence that the pyramid was more than just a tomb. Indeed, no mummy was ever found inside the Great Pyramid, and the sarcophagus in the King's Chamber is roughly an inch too large to have been brought in after the room was constructed, suggesting it was placed there first, and the pyramid built around it. The precision of the King's Chamber is astonishing. The granite blocks are cut with such accuracy that even a razor blade cannot be inserted between them. The room's geometry, proportions, and acoustic properties have led some to speculate that it served as an energy device, a harmonic chamber, or even a place for spiritual ascension. Of course, such ideas venture far from mainstream archaeology, but they persist because the orthodox explanations, while practical, often fall short in the face of such exacting craftsmanship. Then there is the matter of the pyramid's alignment. It faces true north with an error of less than 1/15 of a degree. This level of accuracy is baffling, especially considering the tools supposedly available at the time. Some believe the ancient Egyptians might have used the stars, specifically the pole stars of the time, as a guide. Others suspect they may have had more advanced astronomical knowledge than we have credited them for. The internal air shafts of the pyramid are another unsolved puzzle. These small channels, only a few inches wide, were originally thought to be for ventilation, but their alignment with certain stars like Sirius and Orion's belt suggests a deeper astronomical or religious significance. In 2017, a previously unknown void was discovered above the Grand Gallery using muon radiography. This hidden chamber, roughly 30 meters long, has yet to be explored, and its purpose remains a mystery. Is it a structural relief space to lessen weight? Or could it house something yet undiscovered, perhaps a lost archive, a cache of ancient tools, or something more enigmatic still? The possibilities are endless. The sheer logistics of transporting the stone blocks present their own enigmas. The quarry for the limestone casing stones is believed to be nearby, but the granite blocks, especially those in the King's Chamber, were brought from Aswan, over 500 miles away. How were these blocks moved down the Nile, then across land, and finally hoisted into position hundreds of feet in the air? Experiments have attempted to replicate such feats using sledges, rollers, and teams of workers, but none have done so on a scale or with the precision matching what was accomplished. The casing stones themselves, now mostly gone, were polished to a mirror-like finish. In ancient times, the pyramid would have gleamed white under the sun, its surface reflecting so brightly it could be seen from miles away. Its light, like a beacon, might have been a source of awe or even fear to those who lived in its shadow. Legends abound. The ancient Greeks attributed its construction to magical means or divine inspiration. Later Arab historians suggested the pyramid held ancient secrets, knowledge from before the flood, or treasures of a forgotten age. Such stories, though fantastical, show how deep the mystery runs. Modern theorists have even suggested the pyramid could have been a repository of ancient knowledge encoded in its dimensions: knowledge of pi, the golden ratio, the dimensions of Earth, or the precession of the equinoxes. Whether coincidence or design, such numerical correlations are difficult to ignore. Still, caution is warranted. It is easy to impose patterns on data, especially when seeking mystery. Yet the fact remains, the Great Pyramid is a masterwork of architecture and engineering, whose construction methods are still debated, whose purpose is still unclear, and whose full story may never be known. As we gaze up at its weathered stones, the sheer ambition and ingenuity it represents continue to resonate through the centuries. Perhaps the pyramid is not meant to be fully understood. Perhaps its greatest gift to us is the wonder it inspires, the invitation to ask how and why, and to look up from our present lives toward the brilliance of those who came before us. In that sense, the Great Pyramid is more than just a structure. It is a message in stone, carved by hands long gone, whispering across time that some mysteries are meant not to be solved, but to be honored. On the gentle plains of Wiltshire in southern England, where green fields roll like a softly rumpled carpet beneath the shifting clouds, there stands a circle of ancient stones, weathered and silent, as if locked forever in contemplation of the skies above. Stonehenge is both familiar and unknowable, a monument whose image is etched deeply into the cultural memory of the world, and yet whose true origins and meaning remain shrouded in mystery. It stands as a solemn guardian of secrets more than 4,500 years old, and though countless visitors come each year to walk its perimeter and ponder its purpose, the stones remain unmoved, offering no answers, only a quiet invitation to wonder. The first phase of Stonehenge began around 3100 BCE, when the earliest builders dug a circular ditch and bank known as a henge, marking the outline of what would eventually become one of the most iconic megalithic sites on Earth. Over the next millennium, successive generations returned to this sacred ground, reshaping it, adding stones, and aligning them with great care. The most famous features, the Great Sarsen stones and the smaller blue stones, were raised around 2500 BCE. But why they were placed, and how they were transported, remain open questions. The Sarsen stones are massive, each weighing up to 25 tons, and likely quarried from Marlborough Downs, about 20 miles to the north. Even more baffling, the blue stones, which weigh between 2 and 4 tons each, were sourced from the Preseli Hills in Wales, nearly 150 miles away. To move these stones across rivers, valleys, and rugged terrain without wheels, cranes, or iron tools would have required ingenuity, coordination, and a purpose powerful enough to unite an entire community for generations. Some believe the stones were dragged on wooden sledges, rolled over logs, or even floated on rafts along waterways. Yet no definitive method has ever been proven. The logistics remain deeply puzzling, especially given the sheer weight and size of the stones, and the limited technological capabilities of the time. But the mystery of Stonehenge is not merely how it was built, it is why. What drove ancient people to return to this windswept field again and again? To shape and lift stones into precise arrangements, to bury their dead in nearby barrows, and to orient their creation so perfectly with the cycles of the sun and moon. Archaeological evidence shows that the site was more than just a circle of stones. It was part of a complex ceremonial landscape that included avenues, burial mounds, and wooden circles, many of which are lined with celestial events. The most famous alignment is that of the heel stone, which marks the spot where the sun rises on the summer solstice. On that day, as dawn breaks, sunlight pierces the heart of the monument, shining directly into the center of the stone circle. It is a moment of precision and power, one that still draws crowds each year to witness the rising sun in the same way the ancients once did. Some scholars believe Stonehenge was a kind of calendar, a way to track the solar and lunar cycles essential for agriculture and ritual. Others propose it was a place of healing, perhaps due to the long journey of the blue stones from whale stones believed by some to possess special curative properties. There is evidence of injuries and diseases in the remains of those buried nearby, suggesting that pilgrims may have travelled to Stonehenge seeking relief or spiritual salvation. Yet others argue it was a centre of ancestor worship, a place to commune with the spirits of the dead. The cremated remains found in the surrounding ditch, dating back to the earliest phase of the site, hint at a funerary function. Some even suggest Stonehenge served as a bridge between the living and the dead, its stones acting as silent sentinels standing between this world and the next. Modern techniques have uncovered astonishing details about the people who built Stonehenge. Isotope analysis of teeth and bones shows that some workers and pilgrims came from hundreds of miles away. DNA evidence reveals that the community was not a homogeneous group, but a mix of local and distant peoples, perhaps united by common beliefs or shared goals. This suggests that Stonehenge was more than a local monument. It may have been a national or even international center of ritual, drawing people from across prehistoric Britain and beyond. Its construction likely required immense cooperation, social organization, and shared purpose, perhaps rivaling even the Great Pyramids in terms of communal effort. Yet despite the growing mountain of data, Stonehenge remains elusive in its meaning. Why this place? Why these stones? Why these precise arrangements and astronomical alignments? For every question answered, more emerge. Some researchers have proposed that the stones are part of a vast musical instrument, resonating with sound in ways we no longer understand. Others see it as a kind of map or model of the cosmos, encoding ancient knowledge lost to time. Fringe theories abound, ranging from extraterrestrial involvement to time travel, but even mainstream science acknowledges that we may never fully grasp the spiritual and cultural depth of its significance. Its very ambiguity may be part of its power. In silence, the stones refuse to be pinned down, offering instead a mirror to our own curiosity, our need to find meaning in the ancient past. As you walk among the stones today, you can feel the weight of time pressing gently down. The wind whispers through the grass, the sun casts long shadows over the circle, and the sky arches endlessly overhead. The monument seems to hum with memory, with a presence that transcends explanation. You can almost hear the echoes of chants, the rhythmic pounding of tools on stone, the soft footfalls of pilgrims long since turned to dust. And still the stones remain, patient and unmoved, bearing silent witness to the passage of ages. Perhaps Stonehenge was never meant to be understood in the rational, technical sense. Perhaps it was always intended to provoke awe, to stir the soul, to mark time not with numbers but with wonder. Its creators may have measured their world not just with the stars, but with feeling, with reverence for the cycles of life, death, and rebirth. And in doing so, they left behind something far more enduring than knowledge. They left behind mystery. A puzzle not to be solved, but to be felt. A silent circle that reminds us that not everything ancient needs to be explained. Some things are meant to be experienced, to be stood within, to be remembered. As the sun sets behind the stones and the shadows stretch across the grass, you may find that the silence speaks louder than any word. Stonehenge, in its quiet grandeur, is not a monument to knowledge. It is a monument to wonder. Beneath the scorching sun of southern Peru, on a vast windless plateau known as the Pampa Colorada, lies one of the most enigmatic creations of the ancient world, a collection of massive geoglyphs etched into the earth. so large and precise that their full form can only be truly appreciated from the sky. The Nazca Lines, as they have come to be known, span hundreds of square miles and consist of over 800 straight lines, 300 geometric shapes, and more than 70 stylized animal and plant figures, some stretching hundreds of feet in length. From above, they resemble a vast canvas, a desert floor turned into a celestial message board, its meaning lost to time. But from the ground the lines are barely noticeable, shallow trenches no deeper than a few inches, created by removing the reddish iron oxide-coated pebbles to reveal the lighter-colored earth beneath. They seem almost too delicate to have survived, and yet they have endured for over 1,000 years, preserved by the region's dry climate, minimal rainfall, and lack of erosion. Created by the Nazca people between 500 BCE and 500 CE, the lines remain one of archaeology's greatest mysteries. Despite decades of research, no single theory has fully explained their purpose. Were they astronomical calendars, ritual pathways, messages to the gods, or perhaps to beings from beyond this world? The scale of the figures alone is staggering. The hummingbird measures nearly 300 feet long, the spider stretches over 150 feet, and the monkey, with its spiraling tail, spans more than 300 feet. Each is drawn with a single continuous line, executed with an almost mechanical precision, despite the apparent lack of tools, drones, or elevated vantage points. How the Nazca people managed to design and execute these massive figures without the ability to view them from above is a question that continues to baffle researchers. Some suggest they used a system of grids and ropes, marking out small sections of the design and scaling it up with mathematical precision. Others believe they may have built small hills or observation towers to oversee the work. But even with these theories, the execution seems to defy the known capabilities of the time. Why would a culture with no known written language or wheeled vehicles devote such energy to a project that, from ground level, appears almost invisible? One of the leading theories posits that the lines had a religious or ceremonial purpose. Many believe the figures were part of a ritual landscape connected to the worship of water, an incredibly scarce and precious resource in this arid region. The geoglyphs may have marked sacred pathways, used in ceremonies to invoke the gods for rain and fertility. The shapes, birds, fish, plants may symbolize elements of nature vital to survival, and their construction might have been an act of devotion, a prayer inscribed in the earth. Another intriguing idea is that the lines functioned as a massive astronomical calendar. Maria Reich, a German mathematician and archaeologist who dedicated her life to studying the Nazca Lines, argued that many of the lines and figures align with celestial events, such as solstices and equinoxes. She believed the monkey represented the constellation Ursa Major, and that other animals marked positions of the sun, moon, or stars. Yet later studies cast doubt on this idea, finding fewer alignments than originally thought. Still, the astronomical theory lingers, because the landscape seems too ordered, too deliberate, to be merely decorative. And then, inevitably come the more speculative explanations. The idea that the Nazca Lines were created to be seen from the sky has led some to suggest that they were meant for aerial observers, perhaps gods, or even ancient astronauts. This fringe theory, popularized by Erich von Däniken in the 1960s, argues that the lines might have been landing strips, navigational markers, or signals to beings from other worlds. While most scholars dismiss this as pseudoscience, it continues to capture the imagination, because the scale and mystery of the lines seem to invite something beyond conventional explanation. In recent years, technology has begun to reveal even more hidden figures, invisible to the naked eye, uncovered through drone surveys, satellite imaging, and AI-assisted mapping. These newer geoglyphs are often smaller and older, and their discovery shows that the creation of these figures was a long-standing tradition, evolving over time. This suggests a culture deeply invested in symbolic expression, capable of organizing complex communal efforts over generations. The lines were not merely art, they were part of a worldview, a belief system carved into the very bones of the earth. Some lines stretch for miles, perfectly straight, crossing hills and valleys with unwavering precision. Others form trapezoids, spirals, and zigzags. The sheer variety of forms suggests different functions, perhaps different messages or audiences. Some may have been ritual paths walked by participants in sacred processions, their footsteps following ancient patterns as prayers rose into the sky. Others may have served as markers for underground water sources or boundaries between ceremonial zones. The desert, so empty at first glance, becomes a text vast, intricate, and unreadable, but pulsing with meaning. Despite its remoteness, the region was not isolated. The Nazca culture was part of a broader Andean world, trading with neighboring peoples, inheriting and transforming older traditions. Their ceramics, textiles, and aqueducts show a sophisticated society capable of abstract thought, artistic expression, and monumental engineering. The lines, then, must be viewed not in isolation, but as part of this rich cultural tapestry. Yet even among the wonders of ancient Peru, the Nazca Lines remain unique. No other culture created such massive, ground-based images designed seemingly for the heavens. Whether their purpose was practical, spiritual, or symbolic, the lines have achieved something transcendent. They bridge the earth and sky, body and spirit, presence and absence. Standing among the lines, with the vast blue sky above and the desert stretching endlessly around, you might feel the silence pressing close. The ground underfoot bears marks made by hands long vanished, feet that once trod these paths with purpose now gone to dust. And still the lines remain, as clear as the day they were etched, holding fast to their secrets. There is something profoundly humbling in this. The lines remind us that not all meaning must be explained. Some expressions of human creativity reach beyond reason, echoing across time in ways we may never fully comprehend. The Nazca did not need to see their art from above, they believed the gods could. Perhaps that was enough. In this age of satellites and aerial photography, we see what they never could. But they felt what we may have forgotten, that the land itself can be sacred, that walking a path with intention can be a prayer, and that silence does not mean absence. It means mystery. The Nazca Lines, etched so lightly into the desert floor yet so deeply into the mystery of the human past, are not just messages to the sky. They are messages to us. It was the year 1901, and deep beneath the turquoise waters off the coast of the small Greek island of Antikythera, sponge divers made a startling discovery that would puzzle and astonish the world for more than a century to come. Among the marble statues, amphora, and bronze remnants of a sunken Roman ship, they recovered a lump of corroded metal and wood, unremarkable at first glance, its purpose hidden beneath centuries of incrustation. But as the artifact was examined more closely, it revealed something extraordinary: gears. Gears that seemed far too complex, far too precise, far too advanced for the time from which they came. What they had discovered, buried beneath the waves for over 2,000 years, was a device so sophisticated it would not be matched again in design or capability until the medieval era. It would come to be known as the Antikythera Mechanism, an ancient Greek analog computer designed to predict the movements of the heavens. And its existence would challenge everything we thought we knew about the technological capabilities of the ancient world. The mechanism, believed to have been constructed around 150 to 100 BCE, was housed in a wooden box roughly the size of a shoebox. Within it were dozens of bronze gears and dials, meticulously arranged in a system of interlocking teeth and axles. Once turned by a hand crank, the mechanism could track the positions of the sun, moon, and planets, predict solar and lunar eclipses, model the phases of the moon, and even chart the timing of the Olympic Games. In essence, it was a mechanical model of the cosmos, a marvel of both scientific insight and artisanal craftsmanship, built with tools and precision machining that, according to long-standing assumptions, should not have existed at the time. For years after its discovery, the Antikythera mechanism languished in relative obscurity, misunderstood and misclassified. It wasn't until the mid-20th century that scholars began to realize its true nature. In 1959, British science historian Derek de Solla Price published an influential study on the device, calling it the first known analog computer. His work, and that of others who followed, began to reveal the staggering complexity of the object. Using advanced imaging techniques like X-ray tomography and 3D scanning, researchers were able to peer inside the corroded fragments and reconstruct the mechanism's internal workings. What they found was a network of over 30 finely cut bronze gears, each with teeth just millimeters wide, meshing in a way that allowed for the precise modeling of astronomical cycles. The back of the mechanism contained 2 spiral dials. One tracked the 19-year Metonic cycle, which allowed ancient astronomers to predict when the lunar and solar calendars would align. The other followed the 223-month Saros cycle, used to forecast eclipses. Tiny inscriptions next to each dial detailed the phases of the moon, the locations of celestial bodies, and warnings for when eclipses might occur, solar or lunar, total or partial. The front of the mechanism featured a large dial with rotating hands that modeled the movement of the sun and moon through the zodiac. A smaller secondary dial showed the phase of the moon, using a clever system of epicyclic gears to replicate the elliptical orbit of the moon around the Earth. Even more astonishingly, the device included pointers for Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, the 5 planets visible to the naked eye, each moving according to their known cycles. This means the Greeks, over 2 millennia ago, had a functional understanding of planetary motion, sophisticated enough to replicate it mechanically, long before the invention of telescopes or the formal development of modern astronomy. The workmanship required to create the Antikythera Mechanism was equally extraordinary. The gear teeth were cut with remarkable uniformity, the axles and pivots arranged with tight tolerances, and the entire device built from materials and with techniques that would not appear again until the rise of precision clocks more than 1,000 years later. This raises an even more perplexing question. Was the Antikythera Mechanism a one-off, a masterpiece of genius that appeared in isolation? Or was it part of a larger tradition of mechanical knowledge now lost to time? If such devices were common among the intellectual elite of the Hellenistic world, then what else was created and destroyed in the centuries of war, decay, and fire that followed? The destruction of the Library of Alexandria, for instance, may have erased entire volumes of ancient engineering knowledge, never to be recovered. The mechanism itself is believed to have been created in the cultural and scientific environment of the Greek world during the Hellenistic period, a time when scholars like Hipparchus, Archimedes, and Ptolemy were laying the foundations of astronomy, mathematics, and mechanics. Some evidence suggests the Antikythera Mechanism may have been based on ideas developed by Hipparchus, who formulated early models of the moon's elliptical orbit. Other theories suggest that Archimedes himself may have been aware of, or even inspired, such devices. While no written records specifically describe the Antikythera Mechanism, ancient authors like Cicero do mention orreries and planetary mechanical models of the cosmos which may have shared similar principles. The shipwreck itself, believed to have occurred around 60 BCE, may have been transporting luxury goods, art and scholarly instruments from the eastern Mediterranean to Rome, perhaps as part of a rich cargo destined for a powerful patron or collector. This hints at the idea that such devices were rare and valuable even in their own time, used perhaps by elite astronomers, philosophers, or educators to explain the motion of the heavens. But why build such a device in the first place? What was its purpose? The most likely answer is that it was an educational or astronomical tool, used to demonstrate celestial mechanics, aid in calendrical planning, or support religious or agricultural festivals. Some also believe it may have had astrological uses, helping to cast horoscopes or determine auspicious dates for political and personal decisions. Its link to the Olympic calendar displayed prominently on one of the dials suggests it may have also served as a cultural or ceremonial timekeeper. And yet the mystery of the Antikythera Mechanism is not merely technical. It is philosophical. It challenges our assumptions about the linear progression of human knowledge. It reminds us that advanced thinking, brilliant design, and complex understanding are not the exclusive province of the modern era. In many ways, the mechanism humbles us. It whispers from beneath the sea that intelligence and creativity have deep roots, that what we call ancient may also be ingenious. As we continue to study the device, as new fragments are found and new technologies reveal more of its inner workings, we may come closer to understanding not only how it worked, but why it was made. But the Antikythera Mechanism also speaks to what we have lost: the fall of ancient civilizations, the decay of libraries, the erasure of knowledge. These are not just historical tragedies, but reminders that progress is fragile. The genius that built this machine lived and died in a world not so unlike ours, where brilliance could flourish but also disappear. And yet, against all odds, one artifact survived: a battered bronze relic raised from the deep, rusted and broken, but still bearing within it the fingerprints of ancient minds reaching for the stars. It does not matter whether we call it a computer, a calculator, or a clock. It is, at its heart, a testament to the eternal human desire to understand the cosmos, and to find, within the vast spinning heavens, our place and purpose. High on a barren hilltop in southeastern Turkey, where the horizon stretches wide and winds whisper secrets carried through millennia, stands a site that has rewritten the story of civilization itself. For thousands of years it lay hidden beneath a dusty mound, forgotten by history, mistaken for a natural hill. But beneath that mound was a secret, the remnants of an ancient structure so grand, so enigmatic, and so impossibly old that it shattered long-held beliefs about the dawn of human society. Its name is Göbekli Tepe, which means Potbelly Hill in Turkish, and its discovery has challenged the very foundations of archaeology. What makes Göbekli Tepe so extraordinary is not just its age. It dates back to around 9600 BCE, but the fact that it was built by people who were supposed to still be living in primitive nomadic bands, surviving through hunting and gathering, without agriculture, without pottery, without even basic metal tools. And yet here, on this desolate ridge, those same people created megalithic circles of immense T-shaped limestone pillars, some towering over 16 feet tall and weighing up to 20 tons, arranged with geometric precision and adorned with intricate carvings of animals, symbols, and abstract forms. These were not the works of a people struggling for survival. These were the expressions of a people with vision, organization, spiritual depth, and a profound connection to something greater than themselves. What was Göbekli Tepe? A temple? A sanctuary? A celestial observatory? No one knows for certain. But what is clear is that it is the oldest known monumental structure ever built by human hands, at least 7,000 years older than Stonehenge, and more ancient than the Great Pyramid of Giza by an even greater margin. The discovery began in the 1960s when a team from the University of Chicago and Istanbul University catalogued the site as a medieval cemetery and moved on. It wasn't until 1994 that Klaus Schmidt, a German archaeologist, returned to the site and realized that the scattered stones protruding from the earth were not gravestones, but megaliths, remnants of something vastly older. As excavation began, what emerged was astonishing massive stone enclosures arranged in circular formations, with twin central pillars surrounded by rings of smaller standing stones, all intricately placed. Each pillar was carefully shaped and smoothed, many of them decorated with reliefs of animals: foxes, snakes, scorpions, volts, boars, and wild cattle beasts that roamed the world of the late Pleistocene. These carvings are not random. They are placed with deliberation and artistic grace, suggesting symbolic meaning, perhaps totemic or mythological. The craftsmanship displayed in these carvings is extraordinary evidence of a sophisticated symbolic culture. Some researchers believe the T-shaped pillars represent stylized human forms, their flat tops possibly heads, and in some cases, carved arms and hands seem to embrace the sides of the stones, suggesting they were seen as anthropomorphic, perhaps spiritual beings, ancestors, or deities. What is even more intriguing is that the builders of Göbekli Tepe were not farmers. They lived before the invention of agriculture. This turns the conventional timeline of human development on its head. For decades, archaeologists believed that agriculture led to permanent settlements, which then allowed for the construction of complex societies and religious structures. But Göbekli Tepe suggests the opposite, that the desire to gather, to worship, to build places of ritual may have come first. In other words, it may have been religion that built the first cities, not the other way around. The effort required to build Göbekli Tepe was monumental. The limestone was quarried locally, but the tools available were simple stone implements. There were no beasts of burden, no wheels. Moving and erecting the massive pillars would have required teams of organized laborers, coordinated effort, and shared purpose. The logistics imply social structures far more advanced than previously imagined for people of the 10th millennium BCE. But then, sometime around 8000 BCE, after centuries of use, the site was deliberately buried. The enclosures were filled in with rubble stone chips, tools, bones, and earth, sealing them off from the world. Why this was done remains one of the great mysteries. Was it an act of reverence, a ritual closing of sacred space? Or was it abandonment, a cultural shift marking the end of an era? The burial, ironically, preserved the site almost perfectly, protecting its delicate carvings from erosion and damage for over 10,000 years. As excavations continue, only a small portion of Göbekli Tepe has been uncovered. Ground-penetrating radar suggests that as many as 20 more enclosures lie buried beneath the mound, waiting to reveal their secrets. What has been uncovered so far is likely only the surface of a vast spiritual landscape, one whose significance we are only beginning to grasp. Some theories suggest that Göbekli Tepe functioned as a center of pilgrimage, drawing groups from across the region to participate in communal rituals. Others believe it was a place of initiation, where the boundaries between life and death, the human and the divine, were explored through ceremony and symbol. The alignment of the structures with celestial bodies has also drawn attention. Some researchers propose that the site may have been used to track the stars or mark significant events like solstices or equinoxes. The Vulture Stone, or Pillar 43, is one of the most famous examples, bearing a set of enigmatic symbols that some interpret as a kind of proto-astronomical code, possibly referring to constellations or even a cometary event. But these interpretations remain controversial and speculative. What is not in doubt is the site holders. Standing among the ancient stones, one feels a presence of time, of intention, of something sacred. These were not random monuments. They were built with purpose and reverence, by people who saw themselves as part of a larger, interconnected cosmos. They left no writing, no texts, no explanations, only stone and silence. And yet, through those stones, a voice emerges, a voice that speaks of wonder, of belief, of a longing to reach beyond the visible world. Göbekli Tepe does not give up its secrets easily. It challenges us not just with its age or scale, but with what it implies about human nature. That even in our earliest days, before cities, before crops, before the wheel or the plough, we were builders of temples. That the spiritual impulse, the desire to create, to remember, to connect with something eternal was with us from the very beginning. As we gaze upon the weathered stones of Göbekli Tepe, as we trace the shapes carved by hands long gone, we are reminded of our deep roots. Of a humanity that has always reached upward, even while living close to the earth. In that reaching, in that shaping of stone into meaning, we find echoes of ourselves. And in those echoes, perhaps, the first breath of civilization. There is a silence that echoes across the centuries, a silence not born of absence, but of mystery, a language lost in plain sight. In the dust and clay of the Indus Valley, in the fragments of seals, pottery, and tablets left behind by one of the world's oldest civilizations, there is writing, rows of tiny symbols, elegant in form, stamped or inscribed with deliberate care. And yet, these symbols speak no known tongue. They have defied all attempts at decipherment. They remain enigma. This is the Indus Valley script, a language without a voice, a message that we can see but not hear, a puzzle from a people who vanished thousands of years ago, leaving only traces of their brilliance and a silence that resists interpretation. The Indus Valley Civilization, also known as the Harappan Civilization, flourished between 3300 and 1300 BCE in what is now modern-day Pakistan and northwest India. It was one of the four great cradles of early civilization, alongside Mesopotamia, Egypt, and China. Yet, while we can read the cuneiform of Sumer and the hieroglyphs of Egypt, the script of the Harappans remains close to us, its meaning obscured by time and circumstance. That we cannot understand them makes them feel all the more distant, like figures in a dream, whose voices we can hear but never interpret. The Harappans built cities that were marvels of urban planning, wide, straight streets laid out in grid patterns, elaborate drainage systems, standardized bricks, and complex water management. They traded across vast distances, created delicate jewelry, carved intricate seals, and left behind thousands of small artifacts bearing a consistent set of symbols, around 400 unique characters in total. These are not random marks. They are repeated with regularity, follow specific patterns, and appear on a wide range of materials, from clay seals and copper tablets to ivory and stone. Some scholars believe these symbols represent a writing system, but no one can say with certainty what they mean. The seals themselves are exquisite square or rectangular tablets, often bearing an image of an animal above a short string of symbols. One of the most iconic is the so-called unicorn seal, which features a strange single-horned creature, possibly a stylized bull, above a neat line of script. Other seals feature tigers, elephants, crocodiles, and composite mythical creatures, suggesting a vibrant world of symbolism and belief. The script often appears along the top edge, compact and linear, as if summarizing a title, name, or function. But what those signs convey is still unknown. Unlike other ancient scripts, the Indus symbols are incredibly concise. Most inscriptions are fewer than 5 characters long. There are no known bilingual texts, no Rosetta Stone to compare and unlock their meaning. And unlike cuneiform or hieroglyphs, which evolved into or influenced later scripts, the Indus writing appears to have died out completely, with no obvious descendant in the Indian subcontinent. This isolation makes it incredibly difficult to interpret. Various theories have attempted to link the Indus script to known languages, such as early Dravidian tongues or Proto-Indo-European roots. The Dravidian hypothesis in particular has gained some traction, suggesting that the people of the Indus Valley spoke a language related to modern Tamil and other southern Indian languages. Supporters of this view point to certain patterns in the script that resemble linguistic structures found in Dravidian languages. But the data is limited, and without longer inscriptions or contextual clues, these connections remain speculative. Some researchers argue that the Indus script may not be a full writing system at all, that it may be a proto-writing system, more akin to symbolic notation than language, perhaps similar to early Chinese divinatory scripts or even the use of pictographs among proliterate cultures. Others propose that the script could have served a narrow function, such as marking ownership, trade goods, or religious offerings, rather than recording speech in a comprehensive way. But even if it were limited in scope, the consistency and formality of the script suggest a system of thought and communication that is deeply sophisticated. Technological advances have brought new hope. Computational linguistics, AI models, and statistical analysis have been used to analyze the symbols. Some studies have found patterns suggesting syntax and grammar, implying that the symbols represent more than isolated images. They may indeed be part of a structured language. For example, certain signs appear only at the beginning or end of inscriptions, hinting at a directional flow or grammatical roles. Repetitions and symbol pairing suggest rules, as yet undeciphered, guiding their use. Yet, even with these tools, progress is slow. The inscriptions are simply too short. Without longer texts, it's like trying to decipher a language with only fragments of sentences, meaningful pieces without a clear frame. One of the most compelling aspects of the Indus script mystery is what it tells us about knowledge, power, and memory. We often think of civilization as something that leaves a written legacy, a record that allows us to know the thoughts and beliefs of those who came before. But here, in the cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, we find the opposite, an entire civilization urban complex, technologically advanced yet without a readable record. It is as if we are standing before a vast library with all its books locked shut. We can see the titles, feel the texture of the pages, admire the beauty of the script, but the stories themselves are forever mute. And yet, the presence of the script is a story in itself. It tells us that the people of the Indus Valley were not just builders and traders, but thinkers, organizers, and artists. They had systems, social, economic, and perhaps spiritual, that relied on abstract symbols. They recorded something, even if we don't know what. They passed information from hand to hand, from one generation to the next. In those quiet symbols carved into clay, there is a whisper of continuity, of communication across time. What remains is a tantalizing void, a gap between us and them, a space filled with possibility. If the script were deciphered tomorrow, what would we learn? Would it be business records, trade agreements, inventories of goods? Would it be hymns to forgotten gods, prayers, or cosmologies? Would it be names of kings, dates of rituals, stories of love and war and birth and death? The potential is limitless, and that is perhaps the most haunting part. The silence is not empty, it is full of what we might one day hear. As time passes, more inscriptions are discovered on pottery shards, on tools, on small tablets. Each new fragment adds to the corpus, but the message remains elusive. The cities themselves, long abandoned, hold more secrets in their buried foundations. Perhaps there is a chamber not yet unearthed, a tablet not yet found that holds the key. Or perhaps the answers lie in the patterns already before us, waiting for someone to see what no one else has. The Indus Valley script stands as a testament to how much we still do not know. It is a humbling reminder that past is vast, and that even the greatest civilizations can vanish into obscurity, leaving behind puzzles we may never solve. And yet, in our continued attempts to decode it, to bridge that chasm of understanding, we affirm a truth that connects us across time, that the desire to communicate, to record, to be remembered, is as ancient as civilization itself. Even in silence, the people of the Indus still speak, and we are still listening. High in the windswept altiplano of Bolivia, where the thin mountain air carries whispers from the deep past, lies a ruin so mysterious, so out of step with conventional narratives of ancient technology, that it has become one of the most hotly debated archaeological sites in the world. This is Puma Punku, part of the greater Tiwanaku complex, an ancient ceremonial center that predates the Inca and stands as a monument to something incredible, either an astonishing feat of ancient engineering or a clue to something more unexplained. Amid scattered megaliths, finely carved blocks, and precision-cut stones, Puma Punku has stirred imaginations for generations. What is most striking is not its scale but its detail. Here, at over 12,000 feet above sea level, lie some of the most sophisticated stonework ruins on Earth's stones that appear to have been cut with techniques far beyond what we typically attribute to pre-Columbian cultures. Sparking questions that remain unanswered to this day, Puma Punku, meaning the door of the puma in the Aymara language, is believed to have been constructed around 536 AD, although some believe it is far older. The site includes massive sandstone and andesite blocks, some weighing over 100 tons, quarried from sites miles away. How these immense stones were transported without the wheel, draft animals, or advanced machinery is a puzzle in itself. Yet what truly captures attention is not just their size, but their astonishing precision. Many of the blocks have been cut with such flatness, such angular perfection, that they would not seem out of place in modern machine fabrication. Perfect right angles, smoothly drilled holes, and intricate interlocking designs suggest the use of tools or knowledge well ahead of the site's presumed era. Some of the most iconic elements are the H-shaped blocks, hundreds of which are scattered around the site. These blocks are carved with precise internal angles, uniform grooves, and flat surfaces that would challenge even a modern stonemason. Their purpose is unclear. Were they structural supports? Decorative elements? Part of a puzzle-like construction method that has since crumbled with time? The lack of mortar between stones and the interlocking design suggest a technique for earthquake resistance, possibly explaining why some parts still remain despite centuries of seismic activity. Andesite, the stone used in many of these blocks, is an extremely hard volcanic rock, ranking high on the Mohs scale of mineral hardness, harder than iron. Working it with copper or stone tools, as presumed by standard archaeology, would be extremely laborious. Yet here, at a site supposedly built with primitive tools, are examples of workmanship so fine that some researchers have compared the finish to that of diamond-tipped cutting. Linear grooves, circular bores, and holes drilled to exact depths add to the mystery. One stone features a drilled hole less than a centimeter in diameter, perfectly straight through the dense andesite. Another has internal right angles so crisp and smooth that they suggest precision equipment. How could ancient people working without metal chisels, without complex lathes, without even the wheel, create something so geometrically flawless? Some scholars argue that these feats were achieved through extraordinary patience and skill, using abrasives and simple copper chisels over long periods. It's possible, they say, that careful planning, a deep understanding of stone, and generations of passed-down knowledge allowed for this level of refinement. Others point to comparative architecture in the ancient world, Egyptian obelisks, Greek temples, or Incan stonework to suggest that we may be underestimating the capabilities of ancient engineers. Still, the uniqueness of Puma Punku's design, particularly its industrial-looking elements, continues to stand apart. Conventional archaeology dates the Tiwanaku culture to a peak between 500 and 1000 AD, though the city itself may have existed earlier. It was a major center of religious and political life, a hub of commerce, ritual, and cosmology. But unlike other great civilizations of the Americas, the Tiwanaku left behind no writing, no record of how they built Puma Punku. Oral traditions exist, but they are vague and mythical, often speaking of gods who moved the stones with sound or divine power. The ancient astronaut theory has found fertile ground here, though it remains highly controversial. Proponents suggest that the technology evident in Puma Punku is too advanced to have originated from Bronze Age people and must be the result of extraterrestrial intervention or lost advanced civilizations. While most archaeologists dismiss these theories, the precision of the site continues to fuel such speculation. Even among more grounded researchers, there's an agreement that something unusual happened here, something that challenges our assumptions about what ancient peoples could do. Some have tried to reconstruct the architecture using modern technology and 3D modeling. These reconstructions suggest that the site was once a grand platform, possibly supporting a temple or observatory. The layout hints at astronomical alignment, a trait shared by many ancient sacred sites around the world. The H-blocks may have supported beams or been part of a modular construction method now lost. If this is true, then Puma Punku was not just a ceremonial site, but an engineering marvel with design principles ahead of its time. Adding to the mystery is the erosion found on many stones, suggesting exposure to elements over an extended period. Some researchers argue that this erosion is far too extensive to have occurred in just 1,500 years and must instead point to an earlier origin, possibly as far back as 10,000 years ago. If true, this would place Puma Punku among the oldest known structures in human history, rivaling even Göbekli Tepe. However, such dates remain speculative and lack consensus in the academic community. The Tiwanaku culture vanished around 1000 AD, its decline possibly due to climate change, resource depletion, or political upheaval. What they left behind is sparse, and Puma Punku stands like a riddle carved in stone. Without written records or more intact structures, piecing together its story is like assembling a shattered mirror from only a few fragments. Yet even in ruin it speaks volumes. Puma Punku tells us that the ancient world was not primitive. It was inventive, experimental, and often far more capable than we give it credit for. It hints that knowledge can be lost not just in books, but in technique, in understanding, in the unspoken mastery of craft passed from hand to hand. When those hands disappear, so too does the knowledge, and what remains are the stones silent, exact, and inexplicable. As the sun sets over the Bolivian plateau, and the long shadows stretch across the broken stones, one can't help but wonder who stood here long ago, carving perfect shapes into immovable rock, and why they did so. Was it religion? Ceremony? Science? Something we no longer recognize. Puma Punku remains a doorway, not just in name but in symbol, a door that opens not into a temple, but into the unknown past. A door we have yet to unlock. In the shadowed vaults of the National Museum of Iraq, among the many artifacts from Mesopotamia's glorious past, sat a small, unassuming clay jar, modest in appearance, simple in form. And yet, this humble vessel has sparked a debate that stretches far beyond archaeology into the realm of mystery, science, and speculation. Dubbed the Baghdad Battery, this artifact has fueled questions about what the ancient world truly knew, and what it may have achieved. Could it be possible that more than 2,000 years ago, people in the cradle of civilization had stumbled upon the secret of electricity? If so, why? And more intriguingly, how? The object in question was unearthed in the 1930s near Kujat Rabu, just outside Baghdad. It dates roughly to the Parthian or early Sassanid era, somewhere between 150 BC and 250 AD. The discovery was not monumental at first glance, a small ceramic pot, about 13 centimeters tall, sealed with asphalt. Inside was a copper cylinder, and within that cylinder an iron rod. The setup was simple but peculiar. When Wilhelm Koenig, then the director of the National Museum of Iraq, examined the artifact, he noticed the corrosion on the metal electrolytic in nature, suggesting chemical reactions. He theorized that the object, when filled with a mildly acidic liquid like vinegar or grape juice, could function as a galvanic cell, a primitive battery. The idea was radical, and it still is. But tests by modern researchers later showed that when the replica of the Baghdad Battery was filled with an acidic solution, it indeed produced a small voltage, about 0.5 to 1 volt. This finding turned a quiet archaeological discovery into a worldwide mystery. Was this an isolated accident or a deliberate invention? And if it was truly an ancient battery, what was it used for? These are the questions that continue to provoke intense debate. The idea that ancient people may have known how to generate electricity runs counter to everything we understand about the timeline of scientific development. According to traditional history, electricity as a usable force wasn't understood until the 18th and 19th centuries, long after the fall of the Roman Empire and the flourishing of Mesopotamian civilization. Yet here, potentially, was evidence that someone, somewhere, had discovered the basic principles of electrochemistry millennia earlier. If it was indeed a battery, what could its purpose have been? One theory suggests electroplating, the process of using electricity to coat an object in a thin layer of metal. Some ancient artifacts from the region show an unusual finish, as though they had been gilded or plated in a way that was difficult to achieve with heat-based methods alone. Another idea is medical application. Perhaps mild electric shocks were used in healing rituals, much like the Greeks used electric fish to treat pain. Yet no textual records, no illustrations, and no accompanying tools have been discovered to confirm these ideas. Others believe it may have had a religious or spiritual purpose. Electricity, after all, is invisible but powerful, just like the gods. Could these ancient people have observed the strange effect of a mild shock, or the odd bubbling caused by a chemical reaction, and interpreted it as divine? Or perhaps it was part of a temple ritual, its meaning lost in the ruins of forgotten languages and collapsed empires. Skeptics are quick to point out that the object may never have been a battery at all. They argue it could simply have been a container for storing scrolls, sacred texts, or even sacred relics. The iron rod might have held the parchment in place, while the copper and asphalt acted as sealing components. From this perspective, The corrosion observed was coincidental, a result of time and burial, not electricity. This is certainly a possibility. After all, no other such batteries have been discovered in situ with similar components arranged in a clear pattern. The Baghdad Battery is unique and outlier. But it's precisely this uniqueness that gives it such power as a symbol. In science, a single anomaly doesn't overturn the rule. But in mystery, an anomaly becomes the seed of 1,000 questions. The broader historical context is also worth considering. Mesopotamia was in many ways the birthplace of human civilization. The Sumerians, Babylonians, Assyrians, and later the Parthians and Sassanids contributed to an unbroken legacy of intellectual curiosity. These were cultures that observed the stars, mapped the movement of planets, developed complex mathematics, and created systems of governance and commerce that laid the groundwork for modern civilization. Could it be that in the vast scrolls and forgotten temples of these peoples, electrical phenomena were observed, perhaps even understood in rudimentary form? After all, they were great experimenters. They built complex irrigation systems, mastered metallurgy, and created standardized measurements. Why not the spark of electricity? Some have taken the mystery even further, folding it into larger theories about lost ancient knowledge. Could there have been, in ancient times, a body of scientific understanding that was lost in wars, conquests, and natural disasters? The idea that civilizations rise and fall, taking their greatest achievements with them, is not new. We know that libraries have burned, most famously the Library of Alexandria, and entire cultures have vanished. Perhaps what we see in the Baghdad Battery is not a standalone mystery, but a fragment of a shattered mirror, hinting at a broader forgotten history. Supporters of this view often point to other anomalies like the Antikythera Mechanism, the megalithic structures of the Andes, and unexplained astronomical alignments in ancient ruins. To them, the Baghdad Battery is one more signpost pointing to the idea that history, as we know it, may be incomplete. Still, without additional examples, without context or instructions or supporting artifacts, the Baghdad Battery remains a tantalizing clue rather than conclusive evidence. Museums around the world have tried to recreate the artifact, and while the results are intriguing, they raise more questions than answers. Could ancient people have used this technology on a wider scale? Were these objects common, or was this a singular experiment by a curious mind, perhaps forgotten even in its own time? What seems certain is that the human drive to explore, to tinker, to manipulate nature into something useful or meaningful, is far older than we often give credit for. Whether the Baghdad Battery was an actual power source, a religious artifact, or a misunderstood container, it speaks to a broader truth about ancient peoples. They were not passive observers of the world, but active participants in it. The mystery deepens when considering how long this artifact remained in obscurity. For years it was simply catalogued without fanfare. It was only when Koenig proposed his radical theory that it caught the world's attention. Since then, the artifact has gone missing, looted during the 2003 Iraq War along with many other priceless treasures from the National Museum. Its current location is unknown. All that remains are photographs, reconstructions, and the fiery debate it left behind. If it is ever recovered, perhaps new testing methods could reveal more. Perhaps even a residue of acid or metals could provide a clearer picture of its original use. Until then, it exists only as a question mark in the history of technology. Whether the Baghdad Battery was a tool of practical science, a spiritual object, or simply a misunderstood artifact, it remains one of the most compelling riddles from antiquity. In its silence, it challenges us to look beyond the written word, beyond linear timelines and textbook categories. It invites us to reconsider what we think we know about the past and what ancient minds may have known long before us. In the end, the Baghdad Battery is not just about volts or wires. It's about curiosity, innovation, and the eternal human desire to harness unseen forces. And perhaps, buried somewhere in the ruins of forgotten cities or hidden in a yet undiscovered tomb, lies another piece of the puzzle waiting to light the way. The great Sphinx of Giza stands guard over the desert like a silent sentinel, its weathered face watching time pass for nearly 5 millennia. This colossal statue, part lion, part human, has captivated historians, travelers and dreamers alike, becoming one of the world's most iconic and enigmatic monuments. But despite centuries of study and excavation, the Sphinx still guards secrets beneath its massive form, secrets that challenge the very foundations of Egyptian chronology, engineering, and even ancient history itself. Who built the Sphinx? Why? And what mysteries are buried beneath its pores and within the sands surrounding it? Carved directly from the limestone bedrock on the Giza plateau, the Sphinx is approximately 73 meters long and 20 meters high, making it the largest monolithic statue in the world. It is traditionally attributed to Pharaoh Khafre, who ruled during Egypt's 4th dynasty around 2500 BC, largely because of its proximity to his pyramid complex and some nearby temples. Yet the more archaeologists and geologists study the Sphinx, the more questions arise. For one, the weathering patterns on the statue suggest something unexpected. Unlike the typical wind and sand erosion that shape the surrounding desert stones, the Sphinx exhibits deep vertical erosion consistent with heavy rainfall and water runoff. This is a puzzling observation because the climate in the Giza region has been hyper-arid for thousands of years. The kind of rainfall needed to create such erosion hasn't been present since at least 5,000 to 7,000 years ago. This means that the Sphinx might be much older than the accepted date of 4,500 years. Geologist Robert Schoch was among the first to bring this evidence into mainstream discussion in the 1990s. His research suggested the Sphinx could date back to a time when Egypt's climate was far wetter, possibly as far back as 7,000 to 10,000 years ago. If true, this would place the construction of the Sphinx long before the rise of the Egyptian dynasties into a prehistoric era we know little about. This idea has been fiercely debated and often dismissed by traditional Egyptologists, but it remains a significant puzzle. If the Sphinx predates Khafre, who built it, and why would such a monumental statue be carved thousands of years before the pyramids? The mystery deepens when considering the face of the Sphinx itself. The statue is believed to represent a pharaoh, but the features do not match those of Khafre or any other known ruler with certainty. Some experts argue the face is too weathered for definitive identification, while others point to stylistic discrepancies such as the shape of the nose and the facial proportions that suggest it may be a portrait of an earlier figure. Perhaps a lost civilization or a symbolic deity. Over time, the nose and beard of the Sphinx have been destroyed, possibly deliberately adding layers of speculation about religious or political motivations behind its damage. Beneath the surface, the Sphinx may hold even deeper secrets. Local legends and ancient texts hint at chambers and tunnels hidden underneath or within the statue itself. Some early explorers in the 19th century reported finding openings, small caves, or passages carved into the rock near the Sphinx, but modern excavations have yet to confirm extensive internal chambers. Nonetheless, the possibility tantalizes historians and treasure hunters alike. Could there be archives, treasures, or relics buried under the Sphinx, waiting to be discovered? Egyptian lore speaks of a hall of records, a mythical repository of knowledge from an ancient civilization that predates recorded history. According to these legends, this hall contains wisdom passed down from the gods, records of humanity's origins, lost technologies, and cosmic secrets. Some esoteric groups and alternative historians speculate that this hall of records lies beneath the Sphinx, hidden for millennia. While mainstream archaeology does not support these claims, the mystery persists in popular imagination. Another intriguing aspect is the alignment of the Sphinx itself. It faces almost due east, directly toward the rising sun during the spring and autumn equinoxes. This orientation suggests a strong astronomical or religious significance linked to solar worship. The lion's body symbolizes strength and power, while the human face implies intelligence and wisdom. Together, the Sphinx may represent the divine union and animal, a guardian of sacred knowledge, or an embodiment of the sun god Ra. Its position on the Giza plateau, among the pyramids, also connects it to the ancient Egyptian conception of the afterlife, the stars, and the journey of the soul. Beyond its symbolism, the construction of the Sphinx itself remains a technical marvel. Carving such a massive figure from a single limestone ridge required incredible skill and planning. The workers had to carefully chisel away vast amounts of rock while maintaining the statue's proportions and structural integrity. The surrounding area was once flooded with sand, which protected the Sphinx for centuries, but also made excavation difficult. Over time, layers of sand buried the monument up to its neck until it was uncovered during various excavation campaigns. The first known clearing was in 1400 B.C. under Pharaoh Thutmose IV, whose dreams tell between the Sphinx's paws the story of the god appearing to him in a dream and commanding the removal of the sand. Despite extensive study, no definitive answer explains every aspect of the Sphinx. The water erosion evidence remains a compelling puzzle. Could an ancient civilization with architectural and scientific knowledge far older than we thought have built it? If so, what happened to this civilization? Was it erased from history by natural catastrophe, invasion, or gradual decline? Or does the Sphinx represent a fusion of multiple periods, a monument built, modified, and restored across centuries? Archaeologists generally favor the latter theory, but the debate remains open. Further clues come from the Giza plateau itself, often called the necropolis or city of the dead. It was a vast ceremonial complex, designed with meticulous astronomical alignments. The pyramids themselves align with stars in Orion's belt, linking the landscape to Egyptian cosmology. The Sphinx, positioned on the eastern edge, acts as a guardian of the rising sun, symbolizing resurrection and renewal. This grand design suggests the ancient Egyptians had profound knowledge of astronomy and sacred geometry, encoded into their monuments. Yet, how much of this knowledge came from earlier cultures remains a mystery. Some researchers have proposed that the Sphinx was originally painted in bright colors. Traces of pigments found on the statue support this idea, meaning the imposing figure would have been vivid and lifelike in its time, not the weathered, monochrome statue we see today. Imagine the impact on those who first gazed upon it, an awe-inspiring guardian, radiant under the sun, part man, part lion, and all mystery. The Sphinx continues to be a magnet for mystery seekers, conspiracy theorists, and explorers. From theories about hidden chambers and lost civilizations to debates on its true age and meaning, it captures the imagination as no other monument can. It reminds us that beneath the surface of accepted history, there lie questions yet unanswered, riddles waiting to be solved. What does the Sphinx know? What stories lie buried beneath the shifting sands? With every new excavation and every technological advancement, be it ground-penetrating radar or 3D mapping, we inch closer to understanding this ancient sentinel. Yet the Sphinx guards its secrets with a stoic silence, inviting us not only to look but to wonder. Among the many unsolved puzzles of the ancient world, none has captured the imagination quite like the tale of Atlantis. The story of a lost civilization submerged beneath the waves, possessing advanced knowledge and power beyond its time, has fascinated scholars, explorers, and dreamers for over 2 millennia. But is Atlantis simply a myth born from the fertile minds of ancient storytellers? Or could it be a distant memory of a real place, a civilization wiped from the earth by catastrophe? The search for Atlantis straddles the boundary between legend and history, challenging us to question the line between myth and reality. The story of Atlantis originates with the Greek philosopher Plato, who first mentioned the city in 2 dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, written around 360 BC. According to Plato, Atlantis was a powerful island nation that existed about 9,000 years before his time, located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, now known as the Strait of Gibraltar. The Atlanteans were said to be a technologically advanced and wealthy people, possessing great knowledge of architecture, engineering, and governance. Their capital city was described as a marvel of concentric rings of land and water, with magnificent temples and palaces built of precious metals and stones. Plato's account tells of Atlantis's decline following a moral decay among its people, culminating in a cataclysmic event where the island was swallowed by the sea in a single day and night. The story served as a moral allegory warning of hubris and the consequences of societal corruption, but it also planted a seed of curiosity that has endured to this day. For centuries, scholars have debated the origins and truth behind Atlantis. Was Plato recounting an actual historical event, distorted through time? Or was Atlantis simply a fictional device, a philosophical metaphor for his own ideas about ideal societies? Some argue that the details of Atlantis were inspired by knowledge of real ancient civilizations that faced destruction, such as the Minoan civilization on Crete. The Minoans, who flourished around 2000-1500 BC, were indeed advanced, with impressive palaces and complex infrastructure. They suffered a devastating collapse, possibly due to a volcanic eruption on the nearby island of Thera, modern-day Santorini. Could this historical event have served as the seed for Plato's tale? Other researchers have proposed that Atlantis is a distorted memory of the Black Sea flood, a massive inundation event around 5600 BC when rising sea levels breached a natural dam, flooding a vast area and displacing many ancient communities. The memory of such a sudden and devastating flood could have passed down through oral traditions, eventually morphing into the Atlantis legend. Despite the lack of definitive archaeological evidence, the search for Atlantis has inspired countless expeditions and hypotheses. Over the centuries, various locations around the world have been suggested as the possible site of Atlantis, from the Azores and the Canary Islands in the Atlantic Ocean to the Caribbean, the Mediterranean, and even Antarctica. Some propose that the island was located in the shallow waters of the Bahamas or submerged off the coast of Spain or Morocco. Each proposed site claims some fragment of evidence: underwater ruins, unusual geological formations, or submerged cities that might correspond to the myth. In the 20th century, sonar and underwater exploration revealed many sunken structures that were initially believed to be remnants of Atlantis. Some were natural formations, but others were ancient human constructions. One example is the underwater city near Yonaguni, Japan, where stepped terraces and rectangular blocks have sparked debate about whether these are man-made ruins or natural rock formations. Similar underwater discoveries have fueled speculation, but no consensus exists. Skeptics argue that Atlantis is purely a literary invention, pointing out that Plato's dialogues intended the story to be historical fact. They emphasize that many of the features described, such as concentric rings of water and land and incredible architectural feats, could be symbolic rather than literal. The moralistic tone of the story fits well with Plato's philosophical style, using Atlantis as a cautionary tale about human nature and governance. However, the allure of Atlantis endures precisely because it straddles the known and the unknown. It embodies a longing to uncover lost knowledge, to connect with a past civilization that may have held secrets now forgotten. Atlantis symbolizes the ultimate what if. What if an advanced culture existed long before our recorded history and was wiped away by natural disaster or conflict? What if beneath the waves lie remnants of a world that challenges our understanding of human development? Adding to the mystery is the idea that Atlantis might not be a single place, but rather a symbol for lost continents or vanished cultures around the globe. Some propose that Atlantis could represent a collective memory of multiple catastrophic events: floods, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions that destroyed early societies worldwide, from the Americas to Asia. The story may have merged many oral traditions, adapting over time into the myth recorded by Plato. The impact of Atlantis on culture cannot be overstated. It has inspired art, literature, films, and conspiracy theories. From the fantastical interpretations of Jules Verne and Edgar Case's psychic predictions to modern fictional renditions in movies and video games, Atlantis has become a cultural icon representing mystery and lost wisdom. The myth's endurance reflects a universal human fascination with the unknown and the desire to uncover our origins. From a scientific perspective, the story of Atlantis also highlights the importance of geology, archaeology, and oceanography in understanding Earth's past. Advances in underwater technology, satellite imagery, and sediment analysis continue to shed light on ancient coastlines, submerged cities, and climate changes that shaped human history. Though Atlantis remains undiscovered, these fields bring us closer to piecing together the stories of ancient civilizations lost to time. In the end, whether Atlantis is a historical place or a symbolic myth, its power lies in its mystery. It invites us to explore not only the physical world but the boundaries of knowledge and imagination. The search for Atlantis challenges us to think critically about history, to question what evidence we accept, and to remain open to new possibilities. The story reminds us that history is not fixed but ever evolving, shaped by discovery, interpretation, and sometimes legend. Atlantis, submerged beneath the ocean's depths, continues to call to explorers, dreamers, and seekers of truth. Whether we find it or not, it will forever represent humanity's eternal quest to uncover what lies beyond the horizon.